And now, from the wild, wacky, weird world of Pandemonium, also known as Parag Raje, emerges a trilogy, a gift of three stories based on the Adbhut Ramayan. Story number 3, title of the story, Nidradevi's Revenge, or Why Laxman Laughed. Here's a nice, small, yet long, winding, meandering story to tell over tea and snacks, which can stretch up to dinner time to keep pesky kids indoors engrossed on any rainy or any other day whatsoever and wheresoever. This is a story from the Ramayana which I read in my childhood. I am retelling it now sheerly to share the joy. In Ayodhya, as per the boon given to Queen Kaikeyi, Prince Ram was exiled into the jungle for 14 years. His dutiful wife Sita had already decided to accompany him into exile too. Prince Ram went to seek farewell blessings from his younger mother, Queen Sumitra. Queen Sumitra was very much concerned about the safety of Ram and Sita in the wild jungles. She asked him to do her a favor by taking her son and Ram's younger brother, Prince Laxman, along with him into exile too. As Queen Kaikeyi's boon did not stipulate any isolation clause for Rama, he could not deny Queen Sumitra her wish, which goes to show that all stepmothers are not wicked. Some may be wise and loving like Queen Sumitra. Prince Ram couldn't refuse his younger mother's desire and agreed to take Laxman with him, provided Laxman was willing. Needless to say, Prince Laxman, who loved his elder brother Ram very much, was overjoyed to hear his mother's orders. It was as if Queen Sumitra was expressing his own desire aloud, with an authority that Ram could not refuse or avoid, which Ram would have surely done had Prince Laxman asked him directly for his permission to accompany Ram and Sita into exile. So sometimes it's wiser to go through proper channels and use an agent to get our paperwork done faster and assuredly. Small children do it all the time by using their mother to get a favor from their father. Anyway, returning to Laxman's story. When Laxman was ready to leave with Ram and Sita, Queen Sumitra told him, "Dear son, be alert and on your guard all the time. Never let them out of your sight and look after their comfort as much as possible." The ever dutiful Laxman at once promised to do so. Now the trio started the journey into exile. True to his word, Laxman never let his attention waver even a little bit away from his duty, and in the process, so engrossed was he that he totally forgot to sleep. He didn't suffer from insomnia as normal readers or listeners may think, but rather from a heightened state of awareness where sleep was rendered redundant. Now things were all going on nicely and smoothly when sage Narad, who was the officially designated divine mischief maker, meddling messenger, noticed this teeny weeny lacuna in the daily schedule of Laxman. Ah, divinity in human form forgetting his sleep altogether. That's unheard of so far. Isn't that breaking normal human rules? By Jove, I must do something in this matter. Musing so, instantly, sage Narad landed in the heavenly palace of goddess Nidradevi, the supreme sleep goddess. Oh, what a wonderful place it was! Watchmen, palace staff all went about their daily duties, swaying in sleep with closed eyes. Sleepwalking damsels swept and cleaned the palace, while snoring cooks made soporific meals laden with ghee and poppy seeds and khaskhas and decoctions to induce sleep. Coffee and such stay awake, refreshing, stimulating tonics were labeled as deadly poisons and banned from the kingdom. Palace musicians sang lullabies praising the gentle moonlight in broad daylight. Instead of WhatsApp and television addicts, there were daydreamers and nightmare addicts, sleep-talking mumblers and sleepwalkers. The palace orchestra played various snoring tones ranging from the intermittently gently soft hissing, whispering, whistling, and whimpering snores right up to powerful, shuddering, thundering, roaring snores. Cats would suddenly stop chasing rats due to their overpowering sleep, while the rats were also sleeping and snoring soundly in the cat's open claw clutches instead of running away. A strange sight indeed. So sage Narad very easily reached goddess Nidradevi's private chambers, for no one was awake to stop him anyway. Now I must mention here a small dark secret. Goddess Nidradevi was very proud of a control over all creation. All matter, all living and dead things succumbed to her power. All living creatures, animals, humans, birds, indeed even gods themselves would succumb to her charms. The Trinity, Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu, and Lord Shiva, who were divine caretakers of this dream or nightmare which we call as the universe, were always asleep, which perhaps explains the mess in this world. However, like all people at the apex, they explained and justified their sleeping on the job as simply deep meditation, samadhi. As for the dead and non-living matter, they were just eternally asleep. So to cut a long story into a bikini, goddess Nidradevi was internally very smug and proud of her power. Sage Narad greeted Nidradevi and was immediately offered a portion of sweet milk mixed with jaggery, saffron, nutmeg, khaskhas, that is poppy seeds, cardamom, that's elaichi, some secret herbs and dry fruits which would make any healthy person slip into a deep diabetic coma. After a sip, Sage Narad said, "How strange to hear that you are planning to abdicate." Nidradevi was taken aback. "What? Who told you such nonsense?" "Well," Narad replied with a long dramatical pause, "call it nonsense if you wish, but I did notice a mortal on earth immune to sleep. And I say it with my hand on my veena," which is a musical instrument Sage Narada always carried. "May it strike a jarring note if I have uttered a lie." Nidra Devi was alarmed to see the veena play only more melodiously than before, as if confirming Narad's story, and her eyes were wide open now, alert to this new development. Seeing that his words had made the right desired impact, Narad decided to tighten the screw. Well, it must be a solitary, unique, defective piece from Lord Brahma's factory of perpetual creation. I suggest you ignore it. But at this point, Narad put on a most dramatic, innocent pause, as if the doubt he would express was a spontaneous one. Now, you never know, with these new contagious viruses doing the seasonal rounds on earth, this one mortal may be the harbinger of a whole new generation of youngsters staying awake all night long. A solo act today may become the worldwide craze tomorrow, Gangnam style. And besides, there may be another angle to it altogether, but that is totally baseless. Again, Narad took a long pause after a deep sip from the potion and was almost going to sleep, but Nidra Devi vigorously shook him away. "Besides what, Narad? Speak loud and clear." Jolted wide awake, Narad said in a whisper to make his final impact, Narayana. How can we be sure that it is not a stray accidental defective piece manufactured by Lord Brahma? It may be instigated by his goddess Saraswati, who we all know is secretly jealous and envious of you. Not only because of that long night Lord Brahma spends under your control, fashionably labeled as Brahma Yoga Nidra of eons instead, but it may also be to slowly, surreptitiously divest you of all powers. Surely, Goddess Saraswati must have noticed a disparity in the freedom to bestow or use your powers upon anyone, while you have been given actual power and control over each and every creature. We all know that Goddess Saraswati has so few worthy creatures left in the world to bestow her powers of intellect, knowledge, and wisdom. So, of what use is a power if it cannot be used or bestowed on anyone at all? It may be that she must have devised a ruse to curtail or control your powers, and this insomniac freak called Laxman is just a stray sample or trial piece, or maybe a pawn of a larger game plan. But this is just my silly conjecture. My, what a wild imagination I have! I surrender it to Lord Narayan at once. Narayan, Narayan. By the way, tongue in cheek, boy oh boy, despite being a simpleton bachelor, that Narad really knew how to screw up other people's minds. He knew how to plant the seed of suspicion and leave the rest to the listener's fertile imagination to sprout into a fast growing Jack's beanstalk. But reader or listener, beware. Narad, though an accomplished mischief maker, always had a bailout plan or escape route ready for himself. He would surrender all his mischief to Lord Narayan. So there was no boomerang effect of his verbal incendiary initiatives, or in simpler words, fanning a forest fire with a tiny spark of his words. So please don't indulge in such dangerous, mischievous games or tactics ever. For those who throw a burning matchstick carelessly often find their own houses burned down. Returning to our story. Now, women, even from the divine realm, are always prone to suspicions and will easily believe in conspiracy theories and of other women being jealous of them. Nidradevi was no exception. This last piece of information given by Narad jolted Nidradevi into action. You are right, Narad. I must do something about this matter. Even an ant can kill an elephant if ignored. I know that an exception proves the rule, but if ignored too long, an exception can very well become the rule itself. Take me to this freaky, non-sleeping mortal at once, Nidradevi exclaimed. Narad was just too happy to oblige, and in a jiffy they were in a jungle where Ram and Sita were fast asleep in a hut, while Laxman was guarding outside, wide awake, singing and whistling softly by himself. There, that's your man, Narad gingerly pointed out Laxman to Nidradevi. Nidradevi at once launched her attack. A gentle, cooling breeze blew, accompanied by sweet bird songs, soft music in the background of murmuring brooks and rustling leaves swaying in the gentle, cool wind. Flowers sprayed a sweet fragrance in the air. But Laxman just innocently enjoyed this pleasant change in weather and just whistled a note a bit more gentler and a note a bit merrier. This made Nidradevi so furious that she increased her sleep energy force to full voltage, enough to strike dead asleep 1,000 elephants. But Laxman just blinked his eyelids once in slow motion, shook his head vigorously, and was back in alert position, fresh as before. You see, innocent people don't easily succumb to desires or temptations. They are sometimes just indifferent or in a detached, witness observing state, which puts them on a notch higher level than ordinary mortals. So Laxman, in his innocent state of mind, had risen above the ordinary current world. He marched to a divine music which he alone could hear, and was hence immune to the cacophonic confusion of the crazy world. Now Nidradevi understood. She was definitely defeated, but defeat at the hands of a mere mortal in a wild jungle made it all the more humiliating. What added salt to her wounds was that divine universal blabbermouth, radio broadcasting one-man station and DJ combined, gossip monger supreme, sage Narad was a witness to her defeat. It would be just a matter of minutes and a video of her defeat would go viral on all social media avenues. One glance at Narad, who pretended he had not noticed anything at all and was just busy stroking a puppy all along, confirmed her worst fears. Now, a male deity perhaps would have taken the issue sportingly, shook hands with Laxman, slapped him on his back, remarked, "Well played, my boy," and left the scene gracefully. Maybe even gifted Laxman a sports trophy to mark his victory. But this was Nidradevi. She knew how to avenge her defeat. She just vanished. Vanished from the jungle and locked herself in a heavenly palace, displaying her wrath through divine tantrums. She smashed all the vials and serums of sedation with a wand of wakeful sleeping, and just sat on her heavenly throne in a fuming, sulking, smoldering volcanic huff, moving her divine fingers in a slow, evil, anticyclic motion. She started withdrawing her sleep energy from the entire universe. Initially, no one noticed the difference. Indeed, many even enjoyed the extra hours of non sleep to do some more mischief than usual. But soon, the results were slowly, ominously evident. Insomniac humans transformed into zombies. Dreams, fantasies, and creativity turned into maniacal psychedelic hallucinations. Populations exploded due to wide awake people unable to sleep and with nothing better to do. As the gigantic sleep machinery grounded to a halt in the entire universe, all the hidden toxins which were until now cleaned and disposed of during sleep started piling up internally and externally. The balance, the future, the very existence of the entire universe was at stake. All because Laxman would not sleep. Meanwhile, ignorant of the havoc he had created, Laxman carried on with his duties merrily in the jungle. Now, this horrible state of affairs reached the attention of the Holy Trinity, and they summoned an emergency meeting of all the concerned parties. To cut to the chase of that long bikini of a story into a micro mini, Nidra Devi's complaint was that Laxman was the main threat and she was just drawing attention to the future danger of his power of unaffected sleeplessness. Laxman, on the other hand, said he was bound by his promise to his mother, and that was that. He would not sleep for the next 14 years. He was least bothered about Nidra Devi and a churlish, rude, ill-mannered, impolite, ungracious tantrums. The universe could go to blazes for all he cared. This was indeed a real sticky situation for the gods. After all, Laxman's treatment for curing stubborn women was a bit extreme and dangerous. And though internally they rejoiced on seeing the proud, arrogant Nidra Devi humbled, they could not dare antagonize her either. Neither Nidra Devi nor Laxman were willing to budge even an inch. Finally, with sage Narad's suggestion, who was the main instigator and culprit in the first place, a truce was conjured to the satisfaction of all parties. Nidra Devi was to excuse Laxman from a jurisdiction and exercise of powers for the stipulated 14 years of exile. As a further compensation for aggrieved feelings, Nidra Devi would claim Laxman's wife Urmila as a temporary hostage, and Urmila would sleep Laxman's quota of sleep during the entire exile period. Wow, talk of sleep quota transfer powers to the younger generation. Moreover, notwithstanding the above mentioned agreement, and with no prejudice to the interests of the parties of either side, furthermore, it was decided and amicably agreed between the two parties, including the present and future heirs, that now this indenture witnesseth as under. What the heck is this English at all? At the completion of the stipulated exile period, Nidradevi would reclaim her supremacy with no exception, and Laxman would have to submit to her sleep power willingly, unconditionally, and absolutely. The author couldn't resist all that crazy legal jargon to show off his over smartness. However, the crafty, haughty Nidradevi was not so easily appeased or satisfied. She had one small condition: the venue, time, and situation of Lakshman's submission to Nidradevi's power at the end of the years of exile would be entirely at the discretion of Nidradevi. It was a small clause finely printed in the agreement, and Lakshman did not think much of it. The heavenly meeting thus finally ended happily. Gods went back to their pious sattvic duty of watching beautiful damsels or apsaras dance while drinking somras, which is an intoxicating but invigorating drink. On earth, people copied them by going to dance story, typo error, to their daily chores. Nidradevi once again took the entire universe in her prowess or bosom, with the exception of Lakshman, and all was finally hunky-dory. After many adventures, the period of exile ended and Lord Ram returned to Ayodhya with Sita and Lakshman and hordes of monkeys and many other friends and acquaintances gathered during his WhatsApp and Facebook travels. Oops, sorry, slip of trembling typing fingers and droopy eyes, accumulated during his adventurous exile period. After a lot of joyous celebrations and felicitations, the final great day, the day of Ram's coronation, arrived. Please fast forward visually to Ram's court on that happy day, leaving the description to the reader's imagination and subject to cultural and local variety, and mainly because my fingers and brain are numb by typing. I can only add that Lakshmana was given the most prestigious place of honor right next to Ram's throne. So all the camera crews filming the event of the eon were bound to be focused on him from any angle. Amidst chanting of holy mantras and much ritualistic fanfare, Sage Vasishtha was about to place the crown on Ram's head. Everyone was looking at this act and savoring every moment with double the normal capacity of the humanly endowed physical visual apparatus, or in simple words, eyes. Lakshman too was intensely immersed and submerged in that emotionally charged moment totally. The culmination of his penance of 14 years and so much pain, torture, struggle had finally borne fruit. And at that very moment, yes, dear intelligent and smart reader, you guessed right, Nidradevi claimed her moment of Lakshman's surrender. In a twinkling of a nanosecond, Lakshman's beautiful lotus-shaped shining eyes went droopy and were gently shut down, overpowered by a deep, overpowering sleep. The magical coronation moment was not for him to see. In a flash, Lakshman realized the cruel, revengeful act of Nidradevi, and in that very brief moment before totally conking off, he could not help but laugh derisively, mockingly, bitterly at Nidradevi's act. Due to his sleep, however, he did not notice that his laugh was picked up and relayed, amplified and magnified all over the world. Queen Sita thought that the laughter was directed at her. Had she listened to Lakshman and not sent him in search of Ram and not crossed the Lakshman boundary or Rekha, all the further travails would have been avoided. Queen Kaikeyi was sure that the mocking bitter laugh was meant for her. Was she not the root cause of all the calamities that befell the royal couple during exile? Prince Bharat thought, accursed am I who stayed in Ayodhya ruling in Ram's place. I should have definitely gone with him into exile too. All the people of Ayodhya thought that Lakshman was mocking them for leaving Ram alone to struggle in exile, and were now shamelessly rejoicing without any effort or sacrifice on their side. Thinking thus, each one present at the happy occasion felt guilty and full of grim grief. The entire royal court, full of jubilant joy, had in an instant suddenly turned into an arena of eerie, unspoken, non uttered, guilt ridden, sorrowful silence. Ram noticed a dramatic change in the entire mood of the audience and event, and in a curt, terse voice said, Lakshman, will you please explain the meaning of your mocking laughter? Jolted awake by Ram's voice, Lakshman looked around and saw the severely serious and grim effect his laughter, directed at Nidradevi's act, had caused on the entire event. Lakshman at once apologized profusely and explained by narrating the entire story in flashback mode, right up to Nidradevi's revenge at the most sensitive moment. Everyone was at once relieved and happy and laughed heartily at the style, manner, and poise with which Nidradevi had taken her revenge. The whole atmosphere was once again charged with victorious glee, and the events resumed and proceeded joyfully and happily with no further hindrance. Thus did Nidradevi take her revenge, and hence did Lakshman laugh. आमची गोष्ट आखूड, तुमच्या पाठीत लाकूड. आमची गोष्ट सरो, तुमची पोट भरो. May my story be short and simple. May your kids be born with a dimple. May your days be sweet and sunny. May your kids be fat and funny. Jai Shri Ram, Jai Shri Nidra Devi. Stories lesson number 1. Just goes to show that one should never ever have a tiff with any woman. Second lesson, never avoid or evade sleep. Better to sleep your troubles away than to be sorry. Author's note number 1. The author requests the reader or listener to take the story in a lighter vein with a pinch of snuff. The author sincerely does not wish to offend or hurt anyone's feelings and tenders an unconditional apology if anyone has been offended by the story. Author's note number 2. This story is specially and sincerely dedicated as a gesture of gratitude to my 3 elder brothers, Captain Naresh Vaidya, Captain Vivek Nachne, Mr. Subodh Raje, and their respective wives and families for tolerating and supporting this wacky, crazy, cranky author. Author's note number 3. This story honors and respects all insomniacs and all nocturnally awake creatures and celebrates the nocturnal activities undertaken for a good cause. All copyrights of the story are retained by the author, Mr. Raje.